Hello, I'm hoping that this is not going to be a death by PowerPoint presentation because it's really quite interesting. I'm sorry if it is. You don't have to read the slides. I'll tell you basically what they say, but the pictures are pretty cool, so you might want to take a look at those. The report that I'm doing is on the Air Transat Flight TSC 236 that happened August 24th, of 2001. This flight was an Airbus A330-243 that left Ontario, Canada at 0052 Zulu, headed for Portugal. There were 13 crew members, including Captain Robert Pichet, First Officer Kirk De Jager, and Flight Director Melanie Tessick. There were 293 passengers on board this flight. I didn't want to do the full background of what caused the emergency because I know this report isn't on that, so I'll just give you a brief overview. There was improper maintenance done when they replaced the engine on this flight. This improper maintenance caused two lines, the hydraulic line and the fuel line, to rub against each other. When this happened, it caused the fuel line to crack and leak. Now, after this improper maintenance was done and the engine was replaced, the airplane actually flew for 67.5 hours without any issues. Like I said, this flight left at 0052 Zulu. There was some discrepancy about how much fuel was on board. One resource that I had said it left with 47.9 metric tons of fuel, which was 5.5 tons over the required amount for that particular flight. Another resource said that it was supposed to have that much, but it ended up having 46.9 metric tons of fuel, which was only 4.5 metric tons over the required amount. Now, the flight flew for about 3 hours before the fuel leak started. And the way the plane is designed, it has a trim tank transfer system that's designed to maintain the center of gravity. And what this does is it kind of transfers fuel between all of the engines through all the fuel tanks on board. What happened on this particular flight was after the leak started, the trim tank transfer system conducted two fuel transfers, one of 2 minutes and the other one of 19 minutes between the left, which was the fine engine, and the right engine, which was the engine that had the leak. When the pilots first noticed the fuel imbalance, they began a transfer from the left fuel tank to the right fuel tank. Now, because there was that leak in the right fuel tank, they were just losing fuel. Had they referred to the quick reference handbook, they would have seen the caution to refer to the fuel leak procedures if they suspected that it was a leak. Because they didn't refer to the handbook, we're in the situation. So when those fuel quantities dropped below the minimum required to reach Lisbon, they diverted to the Lajes airport in the Azores. When the crossfeed from engine 1 to engine 2 didn't correct the fuel imbalance, the pilots, finally suspecting that it was a fuel leak in engine 2, initiated a transfer of fuel from the engine 2 to engine 1 to conserve the rest of that fuel from engine 2. At 5:58 Zulu time, the right wing tank was at 1,000 kilograms and the left wing tank was at 3,200 kilograms. When they were speaking with the Air Transat maintenance control suggested that it might be a fuel leak in the left tank. Obviously, this was incorrect, but they suggested it, so the pilots decided to initiate a transfer from the left wing to the right wing tank to see if that corrected the problem. When they realized it didn't, they stopped the transfer. At 6:08, the right engine flamed out. At 6:13, so 5 minutes later, the FO, the flight officer, declared a mayday with Santa Maria Oceanic Control. At 6:23, the left engine flamed out at flight level 345, approximately 65 nautical miles from Lajes Airport. All right, when the engines flamed out, the plane lost a lot. It lost the flight guidance management computer, the multi-purpose control and display unit, the HF1 radio, the cockpit voice recorder, the flight data recorder, autopilot 2, Flight Control Data Concentrator 1, flaps, pitch trim, rudder trim, navigation display 1, auto brake, anti-skid, which is going to be important in a minute, distance measuring equipment, and standby altimeter lighting. The crew was able to use the land recovery button to extend the flaps to prepare for that landing. All right, like I said, the plane flew for 65 miles before it landed in the Lajes. That was approximately 19 minutes. And in order to lose altitude, Captain Pichet executed S-turns and one 360-degree turn. It still landed on the 10,000-foot runway going 200 knots. It bounced once and settled back on the runway approximately 2,400 feet from the end of a 10,000-foot runway. Now, remember what I said about the anti-skid, anti-lock brake system being lost? When the plane landed, those brakes locked up. They immediately went flat and a fire started in the left main gear wheels. It was immediately extinguished, so it wasn't too big of a deal. 14 passengers and 2 crew members received minor injuries in the landing, and 2 passengers received major injuries. As much as I researched, I couldn't find what those injuries were or how those passengers are doing now. As a takeaway, what I took away from this whole story is that Captain Pichet and First Officer Dirk de Jager, they did save 293 passengers and 13 crew members through their training and quick reaction through the loss of the engines. They used their skills and training to safely glide 65 miles to the nearest airport and landed without any casualties, which is a huge deal. They landed with no engines. I believe that they used the aviate, navigate, communicate method to deal with the emergency. Otherwise, I don't think they would have made it. One also side note, which is really cool, is that the plane survived the incident, even though, like I said, it landed going extremely fast. It bounced, the wheels caught fire. It survived, and it's still being used by Air Transat. I have a couple of references, and again, like I said, a couple of them had discrepancies, but these were all the official reports that I can find. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a great day.